Welcome, guys. And today we have a very special guest. We're here with Blake Hutchison from Flippa. Hi, Blake.
Hi, Liz. How are you?
Very
Blake.
good.
How you going?
Interesting times in the marketplace, huh?
Very interesting times. You guys are obviously working from home. I'm doing the same thing. We've had both of our Austin and Melbourne offices working from home for some time now. So we're all in it together, and it's been an interesting time for us as a digital asset marketplace, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Sure has.
and that's what we wanted to talk to you about today, is some of the trends that, because I know we've been speaking prior to this interview with you and with our private group of clients about some of the trends that you guys are seeing in Flippa. And I think for our audience, they'd find it really interesting to hear directly from you some of the data that you've seen now that we've had the last, say, 2 to 3 months to settle into this new world that we're living in, where everyone's obviously getting online. Yeah. Are we able to ask you some direct questions and see what the data is that you're seeing there at Flippa?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's been really interesting for us because obviously we are very much a customer-driven organisation, data-driven organisation. And so with that, we've had to speak to a lot of sellers and buyers to understand what their appetite is right now, both for selling and buying. And then on the flip side, we're able to interrogate the data to see what people are doing on the platform. And that provides a whole heap of insight, which is interesting. And it's also important that us as a company, but also customers can act on that insight.
Yeah. And so even at the most kind of fundamental level, you've actually seen huge growth, haven't you, in the last few months?
Yeah, what is super interesting, Liz, is that whilst we haven't necessarily seen a huge incremental or increase in the number of digital assets being listed, what we've seen is a huge increase in the number of buyers registering. And so obviously as a two-sided marketplace, predominantly peer-to-peer marketplace, you do absolutely have the supply and demand side. And of course, by supply, we mean those people who are listing something for sale. And that is a site, a store, or any other digital property. And then you've got the buying community. And the buying community is there to do, I guess, one of three things. It's either buy something to supplement their income, call it a side hustle. You've got those people who are there to replace their income in full. They want to take over something that's income producing and run with it. And then you've got investors. So those people who are been doing this for some time and they're looking to acquire even more assets to add to a portfolio approach. And what has been super interesting is just the huge growth. So for the month of April, buyer registration was up 32%.
Wow.
And so that took us to just over 24,000 new registered users who had set preferences. And the preference setting piece is super important because that talks a lot to the categories that people are interested in, the budgets that people are allocating for the acquisition of a digital asset, obviously geographic areas of interest. And so that amount of interest in April, we think is most likely a leading indicator for future months.
Yeah.
In addition to that, it's indicative of the overall economy to some extent and this fast-tracked movement towards the digital economy.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And so what do you think, like seeing this movement, so we're seeing a whole lot more buyers coming into this marketplace, which is great because this means this marketplace is more and more well-known. It's more kind of, I guess you'd say, legitimized. I think for a lot of time, people have kind of looked at online business and thought, oh, no, that's not real. And so we're really excited about this, that marketplaces like Flippa are really gaining a lot more traction and a lot more people realizing that these are real assets and that something that you can use to either, like you said, replace a job or all that sort of stuff. What do you think that's going to do for valuations going forward in terms of, so we've got lots more buyers, but we've also got some interesting times coming up in terms of economically, haven't we? Do you have any kind of inklings yourself, what you think might happen there?
Look, I think that given that e-commerce is up in the US in particular, so there was a report that suggested that e-commerce was up 49% for the prior month. And that's clearly coming off a large base. That's not it's not a small economy to begin with.
No.
That's right.
So I think that what that means is clearly the big boys are up, you know, the Amazons, the eBays, etc., as people are spending more time at home and working from home and therefore consuming from home. But in addition, the small business ecosystem, which is online, is going to benefit too. Now, hopefully what that means is that you see a faster maturation of these assets. So small business owners are getting bigger faster, and small business owners are getting to a point where they can recognize and realize the value in what they've created a little bit faster also.
Yeah.
So hopefully what it means, at least as it relates to e-commerce, and we can talk about some segments and categories in a moment, but at least as it relates to e-commerce, I think what we find is that a lot of these asset owners get to that point where they're able to sell and able to realize a fair valuation for what they've created. So hopefully long-term, what it does mean is more assets available for these buyers. Category-wise, clearly some categories have really struggled. And so I think that you're likely to see valuations decrease for a certain group of assets within those niches where they've been hard hit, and maybe those people need money now. They can't hold on, they can't wait, which means that for a certain group of buyers who are interested in coming into a particular industry at a point where there is, I guess, some macro environment challenges, maybe they can pick up a better priced asset.
Yeah. Yeah. So there might be some good opportunities coming up as well. Did you have any niches in mind when you were talking about that?
Yeah, look, if it's helpful for you guys, I can give you guys a sense of the difference between January and April from a search standpoint.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So this is real data. This is live data from Flippa about what's happening in the marketplace right now.
From the CEO of Flippa himself. So let's get into it and see.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And it's fun to talk about this stuff. I guess it's also indicative of and I said this before, but the macro environment and certain challenges that certain categories are having, while other categories are having their time in the sun right now.
Yeah.
So firstly, let me just set the scene a little bit. So this data comes from buyers using Flippa's search experience. So at the top of the Flippa homepage and across our category pages, there's a search box there. That search box is no different to what you see in other marketplace environments and similar to what you see, obviously, in a Google search environment. Now, what people are doing is they're either searching by a keyword or a kind of type of asset. And so it's important to realize, because when I read these out, you will see that some people are searching by business model and some people are searching by category.
Right.
So let's have a look at it. Now, what we do is we receive, not what we do, what our customers do, we receive just over 10 million searches each month.
Wow.
And so this data is statistically significant.
Yeah, I was going to say, pretty darn good data to be looking at.
Yeah, great data. So let's go back to January when the world was what we might have considered normal.
Yep.
And clearly it's changed a lot. Now in January, the number one searched type of site on Flippa was a travel site.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Now that could be a content website. It could be a e-com retailer of travel or what have you.
Yes.
So travel was number one. Number two was Amazon.
Yep.
Number three was CBD, so cannabis and cannabis-related product.
Yeah.
Oh, because that was trending.
Number four was blog, so people were looking for blogs to acquire.
Yeah.
And in
But
that
yeah,
particular
content
case,
kind of
they
thing.
were less interested in searching by category. They may have narrowed down that search a little bit further on their buying process, but their top-level search was blog. And then number five was AdSense.
Oh, yeah, AdSense. Okay.
Yeah.
So travel, Amazon, CBD, as I said, that's cannabis related, blog and AdSense. So that's your top five in January. Now, there are some that are still in the top five. So number one is AdSense. So AdSense went from 5 to 1.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. We always say that AdSense is a very blue chip monetization. We've been in this game for over 10 years, and AdSense has always been the highest valued content sites.
And it's one of the main things that we teach when we've got students who are building a portfolio of websites. We always teach and say, make sure at least somewhere in there you own one or two AdSense sites. And that just isn't it interesting now? That's the number one searched site on Flippa out of 10 million searches. It's awesome. Anyone listening to us, you know.
It was billion, wasn't it?
Go for it.
10 million.
10 million.
10 million searches, unique searches.
So they're popular sites to buy.
Yeah.
Popular sites to buy. Now, people are looking for AdSense, as you pointed out. There's some maturity in that business model, so people tend to understand it. And of course, strong AdSense revenue is indicative of a good content website.
Absolutely, yeah.
So number 2, blog. So that rose from 4 to number 2.
Yeah.
Now, of course, a lot of blog sites are backed by AdSense revenue.
Yeah.
So blogs number 2. Amazon is number 3. So it was number 2 in January, number 3. Now, here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. Yeah. Number 4, fitness.
All right.
Okay.
4 is fitness. So let me just give you some sense of where fitness was in January, if I can even find it in the top. What have I got here?
That's interesting, isn't it? So this isn't people looking up about information on fitness, reminder guys. It's people looking for websites to buy in the fitness niche.
Correct.
So,
and that's because the buyers are recognizing that there is a burst of energy for fitness-related product and information. Yeah. And therefore, if they can find an asset which is currently for sale, there's a real opportunity to quickly optimize for revenue generation.
Yeah, beautiful.
Now, I must say, the list I've got in front of me right here, to be perfectly candid, does go up to our top 35. Now, fitness was not in the top 35 back in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how quickly things can change.
Oh, actually, my apologies. My apologies. I do misstate that. So fitness was in the top, just scraped into the top 20.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, a big change up to now number 4.
Big change. Big change. And that's clearly evidence of, the sophistication of the buying network and the buying network looking to follow trends. And number 5 in April, education.
Okay.
Yeah, so, which makes sense too.
I guess
probably the 2 big things that people are now looking up.
Online
being
education.
At home is getting educated and keeping fit.
Yeah. And education, is obviously a very big category. And there is, particularly with the passion economy continuing to take off and be, I guess, an area of interest for lots of people. And that is where I know something, the passion economy is defined as me being passionate about something that I can build a community around. Mm-hmm. That community feels equally as passionate about it, so much so that they're willing to pay me for my insight.
Yeah.
Yep.
And education does cover the passion economy as much as it does the traditional education niche.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense.
And do you mind sharing just a couple more in your top?
Top 10.
We're going beyond the top 5, but I'm just thinking there's some really interesting opportunities here for our community.
What else have you noticed that's kind of changed or come up in
there? You can see me sort of looking up my screen here. So this is search data that we've pulled recently. I'll pick out a few. So we spoke about this actually, and I think it's a really interesting one. I must admit, I can't quite get my head around it, but now number 8 on the list is dating.
Yeah.
So people searching for dating-orientated websites on Flippa to acquire. And dating was not, actually it was number 19 back in January, but it's now number 8. So that's a very significant movement.
Yeah.
So that's a good idea. Like that's something to show that, because I don't think what our situation at the moment in the world isn't going to go away in the next month or 2. And so in terms of assets, I think there are fundamental shifts in the way we're doing things. And this is really good data. If you've got own assets or if you're looking at buying assets, this shows you some of the places where there is going to be growth and I guess confidence.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that you always consider when you're buying a website. What are the markets? If you can have a website that is in a market where a lot of other people are interested and are buying, they're always going to be more valuable, more likely to sell at a higher price because there's more buyers.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I think that what you're recognizing in this keyword data here is that there's clearly a large number of buyers who are looking to buy for opportunity today. So I want a website that I can optimize today and get instant revenue recognition for my efforts.
Yeah.
But then you've got some other people, and maybe dating is indicative of this, where some people are saying, well, actually, whilst I accept that dating, by nature of face-to-face contact limitations, dating has fallen off a cliff. But that doesn't mean it's going to be forever off a cliff. And what we know is that, you know, all over the world, there are governments relaxing some of their COVID-19 requirements. And maybe there is a burst of energy for some categories coming out the other side in 3 to 6 months' time. Now, what better time to go and buy something that might be on a downward curve, optimize and get ready for the new generation?
Yeah.
Well, talking about other opportunities in buying and selling websites, and I think one of the other really interesting stats to ask you is, because we have a wide community, both buying, building and sell, or all three, selling. What are now that we've got this massive interest in buying websites, on the other side, what are the sites that you're seeing currently? What price range are the ones selling the best?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So I think time will tell how, difficult COVID-19 has been for all manner of small businesses. On Flippa, what we know is that over the last month and a bit, the number of sites sold over that sort of $10,000 plus mark, up to literally $1 million, has dried up a little bit. And that is clear function of those people who have money recognizing that there is some risk to that, and that they may want to save that for a rainy day. But what we've seen is a huge increase in the number of sites sold under $10,000.
That's interesting.
And so what's happening is you've got more buyers entering the space for the first time. Now, those buyers entering the first space for the first time, unless they are very well off, our recommendation is that you always start small and you always place what we might call a safe bet. And so that's probably indicative of why you've seen a spike of interest below the $10,000 mark and a slight drying up of interest above the $10,000 mark.
Yeah.
So some fantastic opportunities there for everyone, especially listening to this interview in our community. If you're building smaller sites and you want to get a good price, or you want a really quick sale, you just heard off Blake, CEO of Flippa himself, telling you there is lots of demand at the moment for websites under $10,000, and that's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's right.
And if you're looking for those higher level ones, there's probably a good opportunity there if you're a buyer to be negotiating at the moment. So
100%. I mean, I think that it does depend a little bit on the niche and the business model. So, you know, Amazon Associates websites right now are under a little bit of pressure because Amazon has obviously reduced their commission, their commission payouts. I think that given the importance of cash flow to a lot of people right now, if you're a buyer lucky enough to have between $10,000 and $50,000 to spend, I do think you can negotiate, and I do think you can get some good value in the marketplace right now.
Awesome. All right. That's fantastic. Awesome. Oh, that's fantastic, Blake. Really amazing insights there into what's happening in the marketplace right now, and some of the opportunities and interesting niches, interesting trends that are happening. So thanks so much for being with us. We'll look forward to catching up again soon and seeing how this marketplace develops over time. If you'd be able to join us again, we'd love that.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you, Liz. Thanks, Matt. Always a nice opportunity to catch up. Thank you.
Thanks, Blake.
Fantastic. Thanks again.